Thank you, Chairman Johnson, for holding this hearing. I want to start out by talking about an issue of coordination. In my district, there are a few suburban fire departments that are coordinating together in the Illinois Mutual Aid box alarm system. And I supported their joint application for an AFG COVID-19 supplemental grant so they can continue their collective regional approach to securing and sharing resources, including PPE, as needed across the region. So those relationships also allow them to share best practices and PPE protocols so that as they respond to calls together in their communities, they can be confident that their colleagues are taking the same safety precautions. So I know that many departments across the nation work together side by side in the field, even if they don't have a formal partnership. I'm wondering if any of the witnesses have thoughts to share about regional standardization of policies for proper use of PPE.
So, Congressman, I'm from Illinois, like you are, and I'm very familiar with the MABUS alarm system. I'm in Division 28, and we try to standardize where we can, but we also use best practices as recommended by the CDC and also the World Health Organization. They also have some best practices also. And so when we try to standardize our approach with PPE across regions, we try to follow the experts' leads in that regard.
And I think the volunteer fire service has done much of the same as far as following the guidelines. It's a little more difficult in volunteer organizations because they are pretty much standalone and don't have a whole lot of organization with other than in Illinois where MABUS exists, but a lot of us don't have that.
I'm not aware of any formal programs in the area that I serve, but we are certainly open to the idea and further discussion on that issue.
All right. One other question I wanted to ask is, I represent part of Chicago, but I also have a lot of suburban areas that have a number of smaller fire departments, fire districts. Do you have any, Chief Ludwig, do you have any suggestions on how these smaller departments and districts can remain competitive for these grants? Because that's an issue that they're always asking about. Sure.
So that's an interesting question, and I thank you for the opportunity to address that. Certainly, the need to be competitive also is relying upon the person who's writing the grant and their way of enumerating the value and the need of getting the grant. And so one of the things that I think would help is some type of grant writing program or some type of process of which they can be schooled in how to write a proper grant, because it is under a peer review process by which our individuals within our own profession review this. So if it's not well written, if it's not well articulated, if it's not well spelled out, that grant, even though it may very well be needed, may go and be rejected. So I would recommend some type of program to help those who are writing those grants.
And I think that also highlights the need for keeping the 25% set aside for volunteer fire departments too. Most of these people that are preparing grant applications, they're people who work in the grocery store and people who work in the farm implement dealerships, and they don't have a whole lot of time to do this, but they do it out of love for their neighbors and their communities. And keeping that set aside is very important to the volunteer service.
Very good. Thank you. I yield back.